All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Live Show. I'm in NB Sports. I'm going to be filling in for Dart for maybe the first hour or so. I think he'll join us later. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it around, introduce everybody real quick. Sports and Fitness, how you doing?
Yo, my man Nick, what's going on? My man Hoop Guys in the building, Steam Engine. Shout out to everybody in the chat. You guys know the deal. It's the Sunday show. We getting ready to get into it, man. Once again, man, I'm glad to be back with you guys. You guys know the deal, man. Let's roll.
Steam Engine, how you doing?
I'm well, man. That 2 minutes goes way quicker when you're not sitting in front of this computer screen.
Hoop God, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, man. It's good to see all you guys back on the panel. Y'all know it's imperative that we destroy these narratives. I'm ready.
Yep. As you can see, I'm wearing my Aggie gear. We got another big win yesterday, so I'll throw in my 2 cents of football and we'll move on. But the title's pretty obvious. It's pretty straightforward. So if we want, we don't really have to add a lot of fluff to it. We can go ahead and just start. In Sports and Fitness, you can lead us off as always.
Yeah, so, like you said, Nick, man, they see the title of the show, man. We're going to be talking about Shaquille O'Neal in this episode. And, where we feel Shaquille O'Neal might rank all time, maybe where you guys might have him ranked all time. And it doesn't really matter, necessarily if you have him a number attached, but we're talking about, is he a top 5 center of all time? And for me personally, I would put Shaquille O'Neal as a top 5 center. I think Shaquille O'Neal, for me, I think is right around that number 5 spot, that number 4, number 5 spot. For me, that's where Shaquille O'Neal would be if I had to rank them 1 through 5 in the greatest centers of all time. And we touched on Shaquille O'Neal in the last show, and I talked about him not being a top 10 player of all time. And one of the things that I brought up, it was this, very topic. To me, you can't really have a GOAT, argument, so to speak, or an argument to be a top 10 player, when to me, like I said last show, you're arguably a top 5 center, or maybe not even a top 5 center. So when we think about the greatest centers of all time, and we think about the Will Chamberlains, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Bill Russells, the Hakeem Olajuwons, the Moses Malones, the Shaquille O'Neals, the George Mikens, we think about some of these great players that played the center position. This is where you start to see that Shaquille O'Neal, like I said, is really, to me, nowhere near a top 3 center. And like I said, arguably a top 5, but I would put him in the top 5.
What do you think, Speem?
I got him top 5, but just like Sports said, it's almost like it doesn't matter what the number is in this instance, because it's like, do you have him in your top 5 or do you don't? Or do you not? Do you don't? That don't make any sense. It's just a question of, you got Kareem, Bill, Shaq. I guess a lot of people put Hakeem in there. I don't think Tim Duncan gets enough shine, but yeah, I got him around 4, 3, somewhere between 3 and 5 if I had to put a number to it. Wilt, obviously, if I didn't name him. I mean, there's some big, unfortunately for Shaq, there's some big names attached. It's not as clear cut as a lot of other positions.
Yeah, just to be clear, I think we're counting Tim Duncan as a power forward, although
okay.
He that's what he's classed as. He did play a lot like a traditional center, but I think that's fair to say we're probably counting him as a power forward. And then real quick before we go to Hoop God, so we have our debate league we have right now with the top 10. And essentially, yeah, it seems like a lot of people have Kareem, Wilt, Hakeem, and Russell for the most part, not everybody, but they seem to have those 4 ahead of Shaq, if Shaq even makes the list, right? I think a lot of people, like Sports and Fitness said, have him around that top 10 area. Sometimes he's in, sometimes he's out. So that's kind of what I was just wanted to give some background on that. Hoop God, what do you think?
So, of course, Shaq, without a doubt, is a top 5 center. But I will say this: I think amongst his other compatriots in that top 5, when you mentioned the likes of Will Chamberlain and, of course, Mr. Russell, Hakeem Olajuwon, and the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I don't think they all left anything to be desired as far as what they could have accomplished during their time period in the league. I'm looking at Shaquille O'Neal and I'm like, he was supposed to be the one to break Kareem's scoring record, not the guy from Akron. And Shaq said it himself, like he didn't take his, physical conditioning as serious as he should have, like a Hakeem and like a Kareem. Because when you're playing at that size and stature, I think you have to put more emphasis on, maintaining your body and your conditioning and your health. Because when I see Shaq, okay, yeah, we know the three-peat with the Lakers, but let's be honest, Shaq should have had at least 2 3-peats or at least a three-peat and a repeat. Like he should have had that type of dominance, like of course Bill Russell had in his era, like Wilt, like Kareem, like just getting a three-peat, and then when you go to Miami, you kind of like I would say he was still like that first year, pretty dominant, but you could see that he was starting to tail off. After they won that chip in 06 and then 07, I think he went to the Suns. It's just like, all right, Shaq, you just bouncing around the league now. No, he's top 5. I mean, his resume is unquestionable, but I really think out of the other guys in the top 5 with him, to me, he's the one that's like, I believe we could have got about 3 more chips, 2 more MVPs, another scoring title, and some, at least a rebounding title or block title, something. I don't know. Just to me, Shaq just left a lot on the table, but he's definitely top 5.
Nick, real quick before you go, can I respond to that real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I will say is I think as somebody that grew up watching him, I think we have to stop with the built-in excuse of he didn't like take his physical conditioning seriously enough, because it's like you have to factor that into whether you're great or not, I feel like, because everybody else that's at the top of the list more often than not took their physicality seriously, took their dieting seriously. So for Shaq to openly say that as he does, like, yes, he's correct, but it's also given him like a little bit of an out in terms of his ceiling. And I think we got to stop supporting that and stop, like, nobody pushes back on that enough. Kobe pushed back on it like during the season, and you saw how that panned out, but we got to stop kind of giving him that hard out.
No, yeah, I'll be fair. That's why I have Hakeem over Shaq, because I feel like when you went up against Hakeem swept you. I mean, they say he's a bit. Nah, if you get to the finals, you're good enough. They swept him.
Yeah, and I would say people usually weigh that when they make their rankings. So, just imagine if Wilt or Bill played against Shaq, right? I think it was Wilt who said essentially the first thing they would do is just try to run him ragged. They would just run up and down the court, trying to get as many easy buckets and try to make Shaq keep up. I think it was Wilt who said that would be the first thing I would do, is try to just absolutely wear him out. But for me with Shaq, like, I guess for me, so I have him as number 5 as well. I have him sneaking in at number 9 all time. My thing with Shaq is when he was at his best and his peak, he essentially just got layups and dunks at will. And if you can just bottle up those like 3 to 5 years where he just was essentially unstoppable, right? Mainly the three-peat in LA. That's my kind of argument for Shaq, of just anyone who in NBA time can get dunks at will like that, and essentially it's an automatic bucket. He commands 2-3 people sometimes. It's still one of the greatest things I think I've ever seen. I know he had Kobe and all that, but he got 3 of those finals MVPs. I mean, those were his championships, in my opinion. I'm not putting anything against Kobe. I have Kobe over Shaq all time. I'm just saying for that three-peat, though Shaq essentially, I think, just absolutely dominated his way to that three-peat. And again, why I have people like Hakeem, Wilt, and Russell over him. Again, you could look at things like free throw shooting, 2-in dominance. I think Rex even said, in his opinion, that Shaq is the greatest kind of what if or a person who didn't live up to his potential, in his opinion. There is some of that sours with Shaq, his free throw shooting, his conditioning. Some of that does leave him, in my opinion, under some of those other guys if you have to give them a slight edge. But for me, Shaq's got to be in the top 5, and the question is, who would you put in above him, right? David Robinson, maybe you could, Dart would probably make an argument for Mikan. So, I mean, I guess my question is, who goes in his spot at number 5? It seems like maybe David Robinson would be the next obvious choice, I suppose, but I'm not sure what you guys think about that. But I got him at number 5. I just don't know who I would put over him. Maybe you guys want to expound on that.
Yeah, well, no, man, you guys made some great points, man. And Nick, man, you mentioned some good things there. I had mentioned Moses Malone. So listen, You know, a lot of
Yeah,
times when I
Moses.
hear people talk about these, top 5 conversations or these top 10 conversations and, things of that nature, some of the things that we're talking about, when people talk about Shaquille O'Neal, what do they focus mostly on? They, like you said, Nick, they'll talk about, yeah, Shaq was dominant for like 3, 4 years there. The things that he was doing in the NBA finals were insane. The numbers he put up, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, that kind of exposes Shaquille O'Neal in kind of a way. It not in like maybe more so in a negative than it is positive. But to me, what that does is it highlights the fact that Shaquille O'Neal wasn't able to do those kinds of things when the other great centers were in the NBA dominating at the time, when the Olajuwons were there, the Patrick Ewings were there, the Mutombos were in their physical primes, right? Some of these other guys that were still there, like you mentioned, the David Robinsons of the world. When we think about some of those guys, this is when Shaquille O'Neal started to have the success, started to dominate. When we think about the NBA Finals and the numbers he put up, and we think about some of the players that he was going against at the center position, this does not take away from Shaquille O'Neal's greatness, but these are the kinds of things that we're alluding to when you talk and highlight about the numbers he put up, the years that he was kind of dominant. It just can't be a coincidence that it coincides with the same amount of time or the time that these guys were pretty much phased out of the league. But now you're talking about the next guys coming in. Well, who? The Tim Duncans, the Kevin Garnetts, the Dirk Nowitzkis, right? These are power forward. They're not legit centers. I see some people in the comments are talking about Shaquille O'Neal and his dominance. When we talk about Shaquille O'Neal, we must specifically talk about the physical dominance of Shaquille O'Neal. And why was he physically dominant? Because he was allowed to do so. He was allowed to play that style of game. That doesn't take away from Shaquille O'Neal's greatness once again. But these are the things that we must pay attention to. If Wilt Chamberlain, for example, was allowed to play that way back in those days, then who knows how Wilt Chamberlain's career may have turned out if he was allowed to lower his shoulder, use his physical strength and dominance against some of the players back in those days, where the way that Shaquille O'Neal was. When we talk about Shaquille O'Neal's overall game, this is where you make comparisons with the other players. This is where he gets exposed. When you talk about the rebounding prowess of Shaquille O'Neal, was he a good rebounder? Yes, he was a good rebounder. Was he an all-time great rebounder like a Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain? Boy, Hakeem Olajuwon. Was he even a greater rebounder than a David Robinson? No, he was not. So these are the kinds of things we're talking about. The defensive end. This is once again where Shaquille O'Neal gets exposed in these comparisons. When you talk about some of these guys saying he's a top 10 player, I just don't see how we could put Shaq as a top 10 player if, like I said, he's arguably a top 5 center. There are people out there that don't have him in the top 5. They have Moses Malone there. They have Hakeem Olajuwon. They have Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They have all these guys that are Shaquille O'Neal. What we must also focus on is that doesn't take away from Shaq. He's still really great player, but all that does is highlight the greatness at the center position in the NBA's history. You mentioned a George Mikan, a David Robinson, a Patrick Ewing. These are great players. We didn't even mention a Bill Walton, some of these other guys.
You want to go, Speed?
Yeah, David Robinson's the only one that I feel like is somewhat interchangeable there. But as I'm hearing both of you out, it's such a rich position, and yeah, again, I'm the one who mentioned Tim Duncan. Yeah, power forward, so mistake on my part. But again, goes back to just the greatness of the big man era, and unicorn is like the best way to put that is like, yeah, his dominance wasn't that long lived, but man, oh man, seeing it in action was just something different. You take into account, yes, he couldn't be ref like anybody else. And I was a big Laker hater back then because he was essentially he was a bruiser in the paint, not unlike some guy we see today. And refs didn't know what to do with it. And they still don't, quite frankly. Kind of the only player I can see maybe moving around in the next few years is Joker. I'll be curious to see in the next couple of years how he's looking, where people rank him, because I know nobody has him in their top 5 centers yet. But one more chip and this regular triple double, like these effective triple doubles, it's gonna be a conversation, I feel like, and he's not even doing it the same way Shaq was or any of these other because he's barely a traditional big man by our standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you stand him next to a David Robinson or a Shaquille O'Neal. So that's going to be interesting to see.
If Duncan was a center, do we all put Duncan over Shaq?
I feel like I have to.
I feel like I would too.
I have to, just based on fundamentals. Five chips versus what, 4 or 5 for Shaq?
Yeah, Tim got 5. Yeah,
Tim has 5. Yeah,
and then he cleared him. He cleared him on the defensive side.
Oh yeah, that's not even up for debate. I feel like. So yeah, if we were considering Timmy a center, yeah, he's definitely over Shaq in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a tough conversation, man, right there. You know, like I said, I've never looked at Tim Duncan as a center, so I couldn't even really have a really, honest debate with Tim Duncan versus Shaq as far as the position. But once again, I would put Tim Duncan above Shaq all time regardless. So, these are things that we're alluding to. Once again, man, I see some people in the comments also talking about the Hackett Shaq and, people using that to slow him down. Once again, that exposes Shaquille O'Neal. That's not a feather in his cap. See, the bad boy Pistons using the Jordan rules, that's a feather in Michael Jordan's cap. Because
yeah,
once
that's
again,
a weakness for Shaq. Yeah.
Right, exactly. They're exploiting Shaquille O'Neal. And once again, Shaq will say things like, oh, I made the free throws when they counted. Yeah, he might have made them a little bit more than he normally would during a regular season, let's say. But once again, this exposes Shaquille O'Neal. This goes to him having to get taken out of games sometimes at the end of those games. Also, the foul trouble of a Shaquille O'Neal. And why was he in foul trouble sometimes? Because of the lack of footwork, the moving, because he didn't keep himself in shape. A lot of times at the end of these games, he was falling apart. So, these are the kinds of things that we allude to with Shaquille O'Neal.
I would say Shaq had decent footwork, though, for how big he was.
Yeah.
I would say it was okay. It was okay to above average, I would say.
Early in his career, Shaq was great running around. He was a fantastic. See, this is the problem for Shaquille O'Neal and the Shaquille O'Neal fans. When we talk about underachieving, Shaquille O'Neal in Orlando, I've never seen someone that size move the way that he did. He was running the break. He was doing crazy things out there. But when we talk about not keeping yourself in that condition, not taking it serious, spending time. Remember, Shaq used to use the regular season to get in shape. Is that the mindset of a champion, of a great player?
No, that's selfish. That's selfish. So, and this is my take with that. Like, and yes, that Orlando Shaq, yeah, that like Speem said, that's what you would call essentially a unicorn. Somebody that size, that nimble, and can move that way. Now, had he kept that up, just say he kept that same like cardio conditioning and staying in shape. Who knows what he could have achieved, But we never got to see that because he took the task of, I got Kobe Bryant, because I've heard him say this. So he used the regular season to get in shape, which somebody like Kobe, that's going to be a conflict of interest because Kobe's all about, no, we need to be in here in June, in May. Like, well, okay, I won't say June and May because they may make it to the finals. But at least, that last week of July, like, come on, man, let's get in here. Let's get going. Let's get ahead of everybody because as the leaders, you want to lay that foundation. Like, how can your team look at you as a leader when they're in shape and you're using the regular season to get in shape? That's just going to split the locker room up right there, So I look at it like that's why I highly respect Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, because you never heard their cardio being an issue, during their tenure of playing. You never heard that.
Yeah, that's why I give them a slight advantage as well over Shaq.
I mean, if you just think about some of the centers, guys, if we put all the numbers aside and we take away all the accolades and the championships, we don't even think about any of that stuff, and we just think about the on-court games of some of the guys we mentioned, because oftentimes, like we mentioned, people will say, oh, you put prime Shaq against any center and he's dominating them. Why are they thinking that way? They're thinking that way because they're thinking about Shaq just bullying guys. Yeah. He's not bullying Wilt Chamberlain. He's not doing this, guy. I'm telling you right now, people underestimate the strength of Wilt Chamberlain and the stature of some of these other grown men. You're not, once again, is Shaq going to be getting offensive fouls, or are they going to be allowing Shaq to just do those bulldozing moves? Because Shaq had literally 2 moves. He had the drop step dunk, and he had the baby hook to either side. That's it for Shaq. So when we think about the defensive ability or the liability of Shaq on the defensive end, this is what we're talking about, man. And what about Shaq's intangibles? None of the Shaquille O'Neal fans want to talk about the lack of intangibles for Shaquille O'Neal. We talk about the leadership. We talk about the heart, the hustle, the grit. Shaquille O'Neal has never played 82 games in a season, not once. Wilt was playing 82 games in Chuck Taylor Converse with all kinds of, after a devastating knee injury. Shaq only played 81 games twice in his career, only played 80 games twice in his career. So these are the kinds of things that we're alluding to.
Real quick, I wanted to follow up before Rex goes.
Rex?
I wanted to follow up. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that. When I seen Rodman do the number he did on Shaq, that just shows me like, okay, if Rodman can withstand Shaq, we'll won't have no problem with him. But I just wanted to add that in there. Hey, Rex, how you doing, sir?
All right. Here you go. You ready? Say
Yeah.
hi to the boys.
What's
Yo,
up?
what's up?
What up?
What's
All right,
happening,
eat your
gentlemen?
lunch.
What's
Eat your
happening,
lunch.
gentlemen?
Miking?
So where are we at here? Am I about to
I don't know.
upset
Give
the
us your
apple
thoughts.
cart or what?
Give us your
That's not
thoughts.
fair.
Go
Is
for it, Rex.
Shaq a top 5 center all time?
Shaq is the most overrated basketball player in the history of the sport.
Shots fired.
All right.
Coming in hot.
Hey, the comments about to go crazy.
It's
Andy
truth.
got the shirt on.
I
Let's
know
go.
all these casual fans. Somebody already said in the chat that he remembers Shaq ragdolling Tim Duncan and someone else. Exactly when did ragdolling become part of basketball? All right, that's called a foul. And if he wasn't so gregarious and so popular and just so famous, both in and outside of basketball, he would have never gotten any of those calls. And when you guys want to sit there, LeBron saying he never improved his game, people, well, that's what Shaq did. So you can't have it both ways. There, that's my piece. So, how are you guys doing?
Hey, keep going, bro. Keep going. I'm gonna finish my taxes. Keep doing your thing.
Hey, Rex, I'm gonna have to clip this and repost it because I just want to see the fans go crazy.
Let them.
I
What
did
did
see
I
an
say that was
interesting
not true?
comment in the chat. Do you
Well-
guys think Hack-a-Shaq was successful?
Until the league changed the rules saying you couldn't do it.
Yeah, they did change the rules for that. I do remember that. I would say overall, probably.
The Pistons, I think they capitalized the most with that.
Yeah,
with that
right. I was about to
score.
say, I feel like it was a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it was effective, sometimes it wasn't. Listen, the hack and Shaq, there's a technique to that. You know, when you think about guys like Greg Popovich instituting this kind of stuff, there's a kind of like, you know, smarts and intelligence behind this stuff. You don't just do it at random times. You have to be strategic with a lot of these things. So yeah, I think that at certain instances, certain coaches were able to utilize it and be effective that way. See, when people mention Dennis Rodman, you mentioned Dennis Rodman, who God. But Dennis, I saw someone mention that, you know, Dennis Rodman didn't stop Shaquille O'Neal, he just slowed him down. That's the whole point. That's what he was there to do. But how did Dennis Rodman slow Shaquille O'Neal? He mentally, right? Mentally, what Dennis Rodman does, he frustrates you. And how does he frustrate you? He gets you inconsistent by getting you out of your groove, by keeping you off balance, by getting you in foul trouble. Shaquille O'Neal was getting offensive fouls. He was getting him out of position. He was forcing him off different spots on the block, a little bit further than he wanted to catch the ball. That's what Dennis Rodman does. Those are the things that don't show up in the box score. Those are the things you have to actually watch and see. Dennis Rodman was able to frustrate guys. The same thing he did to Shawn Kemp in the NBA Finals. He frustrated Shawn Kemp by mentally getting him out of his game and keeping him off balance, forcing him into bad spots on the court, offensive fouls, things of that nature, and then also demoralizing you on the offensive rebounds. This is what he would do to a Shaquille O'Neal. When we think about rebounding the basketball, and we talk about defense, and we talk about Shaquille O'Neal, once again, was Shaquille O'Neal one of the all-time great rebounders and defenders? No, he's not thought of that way. And why not? Because of the lack of consistent effort and hustle he was able to give because of the way that he did not keep himself in shape, and he did not care to play that defense. He literally rested on his laurels and allowed himself to be as big as he could be to use those tactics to dominate. That's when you think about the game and you think about the guys that he was going against. Once again, it takes away from him.
I was just saying real quick on the Hack-a-Shaq thing. I was just say real quick on the Hack-a-Shaq thing. I would say like yes, it's successful because kind of like you were saying, use it in spots. So when would you use it? If Shaq's on an absolute tear, you have no answer for him. You know, your guy, you have like maybe your big guys on the bench with fouls already or something like that. It's only used when it is needed, right? Like you were kind of saying. So late in game, desperation. Again, if you're the Lakers or the Magic and your team's rolling through Shaq and you're cooking and the offense is working, the inside out game and everything, if all it takes is to do a Hack-a-Shaq to kind of just slow you down and throw a wrench in your groove, even if Shaq makes 75% of his free throws, right? It still is just another thing to deter you, make you switch up your game, get you off rhythm. So, like, yeah, it has to be successful because it's just such an easy thing to do as a defense. Just foul that guy. He can't shoot free throws very well. and no matter what you're doing, it can be done. That's got to be a huge advantage for the other team.
Well, the big thing with the Hack-a-Shaq, I remember seeing a statistic about how effective it seemed to be it was specifically referring to the Laker years, at Laker home games as opposed to on the road, because it would just kill the crowd involvement by taking those dunks and all those motivational plays out of it. And then you're just sitting there watching him on the free throw line, and it would really affect that part of it, which how much that affects the team on the court depends on the players and situation type. But to Robin's point, everything that Robin just said, you can YouTube it. Shaq admits to it. Shaq openly admits that he did not work, that he let himself get out of shape, that he got lazy. He admits to it now. So it's not like you can look at Robin and say, "Oh, you're full of it. You don't know what you're talking." He's literally echoing exactly what Shaq said about himself. So there's no argument on that.
You know, I just want to say, when we think about the dominance of Shaquille O'Neal, if you guys remember in the late 90s when Shaquille O'Neal left the Orlando Magic and he went to the Lakers, part of the reason why he left Orlando was because he didn't want to go against Michael Jordan in the Eastern Conference. But if we think about Shaquille O'Neal on the Lakers, right, 1997, 1998, if you guys remember, it was Phil Jackson who did not want the Lakers playing against the Utah Jazz. It was these kinds of teams that Phil Jackson wanted the Lakers to avoid when they were making their runs, because he knew that a team like the Utah Jazz, a well-coached team, a team that was well-run, a well-machined, and that was stout defensively, right, that wasn't going to beat themselves. They were tough to beat for a Shaquille O'Neal team. Because once again, can you guys name me the great center on the Utah Jazz that Shaquille O'Neal was going against? No, he was going against Karl Malone in a lot of those games. Karl Malone, man. When people talk about Shaq's dominance in the chat, in the comments, that Shaquille O'Neal fans, and they talk about, yo, man, prime Shaq could bulldoze and go against anybody. He was being stopped by Dennis Rodman, who was being outweighed by Shaquille O'Neal by about 40 pounds and was about 3 or 4 inches shorter. And what did Ben Wallace do against Shaquille O'Neal? He was pretty successful against Shaquille O'Neal, making him earn it and work for it. Is Ben Wallace anywhere near the size of Shaquille O'Neal? No, he isn't. But once again, it's not about the size. It's about the stoutness, the strength of some of these grown men. And this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that article that you were referring to, I had looked that up a while back. No, and everything you said is true. Also, Phil stated that he knew that the Utah Jazz, their basketball IQ was so supremely high that his Lakers were not ready for them. And the reason, because the Utah Jazz, similar to the Spurs, they would capitalize on your mistakes and then out execute you on the other end. And with that pick and roll with Stockton and Malone, and then you got Hornacek or Byron Russell coming down off those baseline or pin down screens, that's too much for you to, like, you have all this going on, you're going to slip up somewhere. And you got somebody with an IQ like John Stockton, oh yeah, he is going to dot you up every single time. So yes, Phil did not want to play them for that very reason. And they were going to exploit Shaq. They were going to get him in the bonus, get him out the game, just nullify him, and then just pick them apart.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't understand the whole. They had I believe it was Dart. I believe it was on this channel talking about months and months, had a thing saying who was the most dominant basketball player ever, and so many people were saying Shaq. And somebody needs to explain to me how Shaq was dominant when I believe he had, was it 1 MVP, maybe 2? 1 scoring championship,
1 MVP, 2 scoring titles.
Yeah, it's okay. Scoring titles 2, and that's in
no rebound titles.
Yeah, that's all he had in a 19-year career. How is that dominant?
And I just want to say something. I saw someone put that Del Harris was a coach. I didn't say that Phil Jackson was a coach in 1997, 98. What I was saying is in 97, 98, the Utah Jazz beat the Lakers in the postseason, right? And then when Phil Jackson came in, that was part of the reason why he didn't want them to play them. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something I was going to say, was talking about his dominance. I mean, he got his team to the final once in the 90s, and they got swept. When he went to the Lakers, and they say, well, Lakers Shaq was the most dominant. Well, until Phil Jackson showed up, they didn't do anything. They didn't. They went nowhere with Del Harris, who was also a Hall of Fame coach. You know, you know, and then he was never dominant when, you know, after what, 2006? What did he do from 2007 until he retired?
He really wasn't even that dominant in 2006. I mean, he was still okay, but
this is
he was. Yeah.
This is something else that shocked me. I didn't realize Shaq had been swept 6 times in the playoffs. That was wild.
But he was so dominant.
Yep.
Hey, you guys, let me know when we start about the philanthropy. Let's start when we talk about how great of a father he is and all the stuff he does for the community in terms of his.
Can't forget about that.
I have a list of those things as well, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say too, man. You know, once again, shout out to Shaquille O'Neal, man. Like I said, he's a great player. No one's saying that Shaq is not great. What we're highlighting is the greatness of the NBA's history and the other great players that played at that center position. I mean, at least that's what I feel like we're doing when we're giving credence to guys like Bill Russell and the Will Chamberlains, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's, and we're mentioning the Hakeem Olajuwons, the David Robinsons, the Moses Malones. We mentioned something like George Mikan. You know, I've seen, George Mikan gets a lot of flack. I see people in the comment section, knocking George Mikan and where he ranks, all time as far as centers goes. But this is what we're doing when we do these shows, man, and we talk about these players. When we talk about LeBron James and we have a laugh and the things about it, we're not tearing these guys down and saying that they don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or they're not great players in their own rights. What we're doing is we're putting things into perspective. We're giving context here. Sometimes people don't want to give perspective or context when it comes to Shaquille O'Neal. And when they focus on his career, they only focus on the 3P. That's all they focus on. Oh, Shaquille O'Neal was the most dominant player from 2000 to 2004. That's all they say. But there was a lot more to his career. We have to judge the totality of Shaquille O'Neal's career. And when you think about him being on the all-defensive team 3 times, never an all-defensive first team, and why was that? That was partly due to the era he came in. When you come in the NBA during the 92-93 season, who are you going against for all defensive selections? You're going against some of the legendary centers at that position that play both ways, the David Robinsons, the Mutombos, the Patrick Ewings, the Hakeem Olajuwons. So yes, it's going to be hard for you to make an all-defensive team. But when we talk about Shaquille O'Neal on the backside of his career, the last 10 years of his career, let's say, when those guys were all long gone, they had been gone old or retired, this is where Shaquille O'Neal gets exposed. His lack of dominance, true dominance. You didn't dominate the boards, man. You weren't Moses Malone on the glass. You were not a Hakeem Olajuwon or Bill Russell on the glass. You were not that dude. When you talk about Shaq's playmaking ability or lack of, yeah, Shaquille O'Neal was very good off the double teams, oftentimes getting passes to guys. But was he better than some of the other guys that he played with in his era? Was he better than a Arvydas Sabonis passing the ball? I don't believe he was. Was he even better than a Vlade Divac at passing the ball? A Chris Webber, some of the other big men that he played with. So these are things that we're alluding to, the defensive lack of consistency from Shaquille O'Neal, always coming in out of shape. You talk about the sweeps that happened. This goes to the lack of leadership from Shaquille O'Neal. You don't even hold yourself accountable. You're too busy doing rap videos and making movies, which, listen, I respect. I love Shaquille O'Neal's charisma, his personality. He was great in the 90s for that, in that regard. But he let all of that stuff get to his head. He let it get in the way. He didn't understand how to balance it. That's part of the dynamic between him and Kobe Bryant, the things where they butt heads on. With all that potential, you didn't want to see it through and work hard.
Can I say 2 things real quick? For everybody that mentions Tim Donaghy and that series being rigged and all that, like, yes, that's true. But if you don't think that's taking place now, more so, then you're out of your mind, especially with legalized sports betting. So that's almost a wash at this point. And then Rex, I wanted to pose a question to you based on your Shaq being most overrated thing. Is he the biggest letdown then to you in terms of an athlete ever?
I said in the last live stream, he could have been the GOAT. He had the size. He had the athletic ability. He had the background. He had everything going in his favor. When you look at his best games, They were insane, but they were few and far between.
Yeah, I was also looking at his stats. He 3 times got over 13 rebounds a year. 2 of those came in his first 2 seasons in the league.
Yeah.
Which is
Playing
kind of
against
crazy.
the tougher competition, playing against Mourning and Ewing and Hakeem and Robinson. That was actually when he had his best stats. When they retired, his stats got lower because he just stopped working as hard.
Yeah, no, 506, he averaged 20 points and 9 rebounds on 31 minutes, which is a little better than I remember for a season average. That's not too bad, but it obviously quickly fell off after that.
Wait, let me respond to this ISO Joe dude, because he said Hakeem never led the league in scoring. Well, Hakeem is a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He has multiple block titles, multiple rebound titles, and in the year he won MVP, he was 3rd in scoring. So tell me what Shaq did that's close to that, sir.
Yeah, and didn't one year, I was gonna say, one year, didn't they feed David Robinson the ball a lot in like the last game or two? So his average would be like
he scored,
better
he scored
than
71. He scored 71 on the final game of the season to take the scoring title away from Shaq.
Shaq or Hakeem? I thought it was Hakeem. Never mind.
Yeah.
Was it Hakeem? I thought it was.
I
think it was Shaq, because that's where Shaq started this fairy tale.
He beat Shaq for the scoring title that season.
Okay. Yeah, he started that fairy tale.
When that person talks about Hakeem Olajuwon not leading the league in scoring, why didn't he lead the league in scoring? Because he played with Michael Jordan. I mean, what are we talking about? See, you expose yourself when you make comments like that. How is Hakeem Olajuwon going to lead the league in scoring when he's not taking 23, 25 shots a game, right? He's not a guard or a guy that has the ball in his hands all the time. He has to get fed the ball, and you're in the league with Michael Jordan and Karl Malone and Dominique Wilkins, some of the greatest scorers in the NBA. See, once again, man, this is why we're here to educate these people and put a highlight on some of the great players that played in this era. When you make a comment like that and you think about Michael Jordan, think about Karl Malone. Karl Malone would probably have about 4 or 5 scoring titles if it wasn't for a guy named Michael Jordan. When you think about Dominique Wilkins, he would probably have about 4 or 5 scoring titles if it wasn't for a guy named Michael Jordan. So once again, same thing could go for Will Chamberlain in the era he played in. People would be like, oh, Jerry West only led the league in scoring 1 time. Yeah, because he played when Will Chamberlain was scoring 50 damn points a game. What the hell you want the man to do? Elgin Baylor never led the league in scoring. Why is that? Because you're playing in an era with guys who are legendary scorers. You're playing with the Bob Pettits. You're playing with the Will Chamberlains. You're playing with the Jerry West, the Oscar Robertsons. I mean, my goodness, man, what the hell's going on here? When Rex talks about the numbers that Shaq was putting up, and he's talking about the Orlando numbers that you read off, Nick, this is what we were talking about. Shaq at his physical peak when he was the greatest athlete, the guy that we thought was going to be one of the greatest players, like a top 3 all-time player. The way this man ran the break, he was tearing rims down. He was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. He was blocking shots at a high level. He was moving on defense. And then once again, he rested on his laurels and allowed himself to get out of shape and lose that athleticism.
Yeah, say Hakeem got in points per game. He was 2nd twice, 3rd once, 4th once, 7th once. So like he's been like in the top 10 like 10 seasons.
Who has a better overall offensive game? Hakeem Olajuwon or Shaquille O'Neal? Come on, man. Shaquille O'Neal was a more consistent, aggressive scorer. Hakeem Olajuwon could score in a myriad of different ways.
And don't forget Hakeem had a handle.
To your point about Elgin Baylor at one point had the record for most points in a game. Before Wilt, Elgin had the record. And he also had the record for most points in a playoff game until that was beaten by Jordan. So that tells you what Elgin Baylor was able to do, and still he never got a scoring championship.
Never.
Yeah, and also I was going to expound a little bit because I remember Rex bringing this up about people who never improved their game. And I always put Dwight Howard in that category as well. And I also put James Harden a little bit in that category. Some people disagree with that, but I think James Harden just got better at the things he already did well. His game has not really evolved in a way that I would like to see someone who's got as much talent as he does or has. But I always think of those two guys as well, just guys that never really they were just kind of always the same guy, from start to finish.
Nick, you got to be careful when you say evolved like you wanted, because people are gonna twist that into he didn't evolve his game at all, and he did. It just never translated into winning. And again, context, right? It's like, yeah, he went on that crazy scoring spree of 30 points great. And there were, of 30-point games. There were 40-point games in there, 50-point games in there. But overall, what did it translate to?
Nothing.
Right.
Big
So
nothing burger.
big nothing burger, right? So I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, there were people that had the nerve to put Harden over a D Wade. And it was just like hearing that out loud is just, again, it provides context into how people think now. It's all about numbers. It's all about what you could put on the spreadsheet. But when it comes to
Well,
winning,
it shows casualism. It shows casuals.
Yeah.
Casuals that are just given numbers and awards in their face and then just repeat what they've heard. They actually don't watch the games, understand the game, how it's played, and how someone like Rodman is considered one of the greatest defensive players of all time, yet didn't average a block or a steal a game. Same with Joe Dumars. Michael Jordan will tell you, Joe Dumars was who he had the most trouble with. Joe Dumars didn't average a single steal or a single block per game. But these are the greatest defenders of the era, because steals and blocks do not tell the picture. But to casuals, he had a bunch of steals, he had a bunch of blocks, he's a great defensive player. And if you didn't have that, you're not a great defensive player, because they don't understand the game.
Hello, everyone. Michael Jordan fans are the best.
Yes,
Yo,
sir.
what's up,
hey,
Dart?
what up, Dart?
What up, Dart?
I
Man,
actually beat you.
I had a rough night. I was hoping I'd get here like 25 minutes ago, but I was just getting the heat, to say it lightly. But anyway, yeah, I'm doing all right otherwise. Yeah, so can y'all start me from the top? No, I'm just kidding. That's my go. Did you guys go through your did you all go through it?
Yeah, go ahead, Dart. What you got to say, man?
All right. So for Shaq, I think that he is there's a dead cat on the road. That he is a contentious person that I think arguably should be out of the top 5 greatest centers of all time. Now, to my criteria, I have him in there. Now, do I think I think he, in respect to being the best center, I think there's a really good argument to have him out of it. But greatest, I'd have to put him in it. For the greatest, you got to have Bill Russell. You got to have George Mikan. You got to have Kareem. And then I think in regards to greatness, you got to put Shaq in there next. However, I think that Moses Malone could be better. I think that Hakeem could be better. I think you could argue David Robinson could be better in ways as a total package. And then Tim Duncan, if you want to call him a center. So I'm driving, so I don't have a lot of zeal, and I didn't mean to segue from this, but yeah, I'd have to put him in my top 5 greatest centers.
All right, well, yo, Dart, did you hear what Rex said when he came in? He came in and said that Shaq is maybe the most overrated player of all time, man. What were your comments on that?
I think that he is, and I think it's an icon thing, and and I include icon and greatness. So, I think overrated, yeah, on the court wise. The most overrated, I don't know about the most overrated, but I think he is on the court wise in a lot of ways overrated, or at least overappreciated, I should say, because he was fantastic in respect to his athleticism and how they let him play. It was a sight to see. It was entertaining. But yeah, if I had to say in respect to, because some people would say he's the most dominant center of all time, or this, that, or the other thing. And I think it's Will Chamberlain by a mile in respect who's the most dominant center of all time. So in that respect, I think he is overrated. In respect to all time, no, I think he's one of the all time great / best players ever. But for how some people give him these flowers, I think they give him too many flowers sometimes. And that's all I got to say about that.
We should do another topic. Who is the most overrated player of all time? That would probably be a good
Shaq.
one.
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, that's what when you guys brought up
Give
James
me
Harden, these
We're
are the
doing
kinds of
that one
things.
right now.
That's what we're talking about when we talk about the Shaquille O'Neal thing. It's a similar thing. James Harden, like you said, what he did was he used the manipulation of the rules in his favor to gain what and look like he was doing something that he really wasn't really doing. And what happened once the NBA started to crack down on all the palming and the carrying, the 5-step drop back threes he was allowed to shoot, and the flopping and flailing around, shooting a billion free throws a game. Once all that changed, what happened to James Harden? He's been negated to nothing. And what do we know about James Harden? That in the postseason, all those antics and tactics that he was allowed to manipulate, it didn't work in the postseason because the game was officiated, the game was played differently in the postseason, and that's when he got exposed, man. It's similar for Shaquille O'Neal, not in such a bad way or negative as a James Harden, but when you think about Shaquille O'Neal, he rests on his laurels. He came in with all that talent, all the potential, and then he allowed it to affect him negatively. That's what he allowed it to do.
real quick, don't y'all know that Bleacher Report had the nerve to post a clip of James Harden doing a fake pass into a step back that resulted in an air ball? That was a real clip, like on their social media. Like that's where we are now. Um, a fake pass into I'm sorry, not travel, crab dribble, gather step into an air ball, and this was newsworthy. So that tells you everything you need to hear.
You know what's interesting to me is I haven't seen anybody in the comment section. I see some people who don't agree with us or some people who think this way. I haven't seen anyone make a point in the chat as to how or why Shaquille O'Neal is a top 1 center, a top 2, a top 3 center. All I hear and see is, yo, Shaq dominant the paint. Shaq dominant. Shaq could do this. I don't see no one breaking the game down. I've broken the game down to you and explained the things that Shaq did not do on the basketball court greater or better than a lot of these other great legendary centers. And that takes away nothing from Shaquille O'Neal. That's the on-court game. Shaq is not a top 5 defensive center all time. He's not. That's a fact. There's no argument against it. That's what Shaquille O'Neal did in his career. He was not a top 5 center all time. When you talk about Shaquille O'Neal, the rebounding prowess or lack of, once again, your rebounding and defense go hand in hand. And Shaq's not one of the all-time great top 3, top 5 defensive rebounding centers of all time, man. So these are things that we allude to when you talk about the lack of leadership, the intangibles for Shaquille O'Neal. This is what we're talking about, man. I'm breaking down the game. I'm giving you guys the facts here. He's not better or greater than Hakeem Olajuwon was. He wasn't. This is why he was getting embarrassed and exposed out there versus Hakeem Olajuwon. Listen, if Shaquille O'Neal was greater than Hakeem Olajuwon, then he would have gotten at least one game off of him. I see people making excuses for Shaquille O'Neal. Oh, he was in his 3rd year, and Olajuwon was in his 10th or 11th season. So once again, that is neutral. That's an equal. Hakeem Olajuwon was later in his career. Shaq was early in his career, and it was more physically gifted and athletic than Hakeem Olajuwon. He had all the advantages on his side, but what did he not have? He didn't have the overall game. He didn't have the intangibles of Shaquille O'Neal. So other guys made their teammates better. When people talk about Bill Russell and they're over there knocking him, oh, Shaquille O'Neal would dominate Bill Russell. Bill Russell had the ability to make his teammates greater, more so than Shaquille O'Neal. That's not even a question. The leadership of Bill Russell, miles ahead over Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille need to go to class and learn how to be a leader like a Bill Russell. The rebound and the defensive effort that he gave, it's not even close. I mean, come on, man, light miles away here. So let me know when someone could break it down and explain it. They can't do it.
Yeah, one thing for me with Shaq is to your point is that people just really just go overboard with it. And I mean, some people might be critical of us with the Michael Jordan thing, but I think that I think LeBron James and Shaq are probably the two over appreciated, over zealous fans that just go over the top because there are things that back up some things. However, like in contrast to Michael Jordan, he dominated the league in scoring 10 times, the 6 championships, and even on the icon side, he won more of the top uh, awards that you could win within the league. With regards to Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron James, they did so sometimes, but not nearly as much as guys like Michael Jordan. So, and what you're talking about with breaking down the game too is yeah. I mean, and again, he is one of the, or was one of the greatest, however you want to put it, / best players of all time. But to claim that he's the most dominant player in the paint or the most dominant player just overall of all time is grossly overstated. It's a ridiculous comment. But compare him to Wilt Chamberlain or other great centers of all time. He doesn't match up in my opinion.
AOH is here.
Yes, nice of you to join us.
That explains the background noise.
I mean,
Hey,
when
wait, how you
Shaq got
doing, sir?
drafted to the Orlando Magic, they did not make the playoffs that first year. Shaq didn't come in and lead them to the postseason. It was only when Anthony Hardaway came the very next season that the Orlando Magic made the postseason, and they got swept in the first round by the Indiana Pacers with Rick Smits. So once again, when Shaquille O'Neal was going against any sort of center, he failed and faltered. Where was Shaquille O'Neal in 1997? Where was he against in 1998? They got beat down by the Utah Jazz. Once again, can someone name me the center on the Utah Jazz? He's going against Greg Ostertag.
Greg
He's not going
Ostertag.
against a legendary center. And where was Shaquille O'Neal? Nowhere to be found.
Greg Ostertag. Man, oh man. That's a drop. That's a name drop.
AOH, you there?
Doesn't matter. He contributes the same.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, this guy. I was just muting myself. Takes me a second to unmute.
Did you accidentally call?
I'm just listening. I'm just enjoying, guys. I'm just listening in.
Oh, you're just chilling?
Didn't we say we can't have that anymore? People just chilling in here.
What's your take on the topic, AOH? Oh
Have
my
you
god,
guys
I'm about to
talked
Should I
about
just kick
the
him?
big hand?
Kick him. What are we doing here?
All right.
I mean, Shaq didn't win an MVP in the 90s when he was going against the other great players of that era. 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. He didn't win an MVP in any of those seasons. When did he win MVP? In 2000. That's when he won MVP. That's when he started winning. That's when he started dominating in the 2000s. That's why a lot of times people will say, oh, Shaq is a 90s era player. And we may think of Shaquille O'Neal as a 90s era player because of the way that he came in the league, right? The charisma he had, all the commercials, all the endorsements, all the popularity. But he wasn't really dominant until the 2000s. All the numbers that he put up, the All-Star selection, things of that nature, he didn't make his first All-NBA selection, the All-NBA first team until I believe 1998. So once again, when the guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, the Patrick Ewings, the David Robinsons, some of these guys start to get older in their careers, right? And they start to be faded out, phased out. This is when Shaquille O'Neal came up. This is when he started to be the dominant force that we think about. Those are the facts, man.
Yeah.
AOH, you there?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Hoop God.
No, I was just looking at one of the comments in the chat, and Shaq was swept 3 straight playoff appearances: 94, 95, 96. How did he fare in 97? Did they face the Jazz and they got gentlemen swept? What was the result?
In 97 it was 4-1, 98 it was 4-0.
So in that time span, 4 sweeps, 1 gentleman sweep. Oh wow. That's head scratching.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
he
where's the
didn't-
dumbness?
Yeah, he didn't start getting team success until he got Phil Jackson.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I've made
did
my point.
dominate.
Well,
Good.
Shaq, because everybody, I mean, okay,
You know what he did dominate?
injuries happen. Dark.
You know what he did dominate? He dominated the McDonald's drive-through every day in the early 2000s. That's what he
That
really
is
dominated.
diabolical. That is diabolical. But no, I'm looking at a pattern. So okay, one time somebody could suffer an injury. All right, cool. You get swept back to back. To me, that's not a coincidence. But you get swept 3 straight times. That's a confirmation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about like some people are mentioning how he's hard to ref. I feel like that works against him at times too. Like I remember one time, you guys remember Brian Grant on the Portland Trailblazers?
Yeah.
Him just like absolutely trying to wrap up Shaq's arm, and Shaq still just ripped right through it for a dunk. And it's a little bit. This is the only comparison I make between Luka and Shaq is that they invite so much contact that it can work against them and it can work for them at times. I guess I was gonna be a little bit of devil's advocate on the. He kind of was just allowed to do whatever he wanted. He's just hard to ref, right? He's just an absolute monster down there. I just think it's more just a difficulty of reffing. Like, is that guy being more aggressive, or is the defense saying, "Holy shit! Like, I have to be extra physical with this guy who's twice my size." And
I
so
would say
I would push back on that a little bit. I think he's just hard to ref in general, unless there's like a specific rule. I know they changed the Hack-a-Shaq rule, but were there other rules they changed for Shaq that I'm not aware of?
But
Well,
real quick, I would say at least he was intentionally trying to score and not trying to get to the line. I will
Yeah,
say that.
100%.
That's
I
different.
wanted
That's different now.
I wanted to comment on the being like for being a normal big guy. I hate that. And no offense, Nick, but that's the thing that just grinds my gears the most is when people say, "Oh, well, what are you going to do? He's just so much bigger than everybody." And even for me, playing like the typical church league game or whatever, and getting reffed, I'll still get killed out there. And then I go and I barely touch somebody, and I'm a murderer. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting stabbed in the ribs, and then I that's just one thing that just drives me crazy when they say, "Oh, well, he's so big, so should I call a foul? Should I not?" Just on a sidebar, on a personal note, I always hated that.
Hey, well, even
I did not
even if
hit you in
Shaq's
the ribs
winning,
that hard. Stop crying.
I was gonna say, even if Shaq's winning the foul calls and it's not fair, then it's still advantage him. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you want me to say about that. It's kind of the reason people do like him as much as he does. He's just aggressively to the hole and say, hey, it's because he can't do anything else or what have you. I mean, that's fine, but at least like he has an advantage and he just is just straight up aggressive with it, and you know what he's gonna do. And whether you hate that or not, like I think at least on some level you have to respect it a little bit.
But see, I feel like when we talk about them saying it's hard to referee Shaquille O'Neal, we're once again, you're giving him an excuse. Listen, if you want to be a great player, then fine, you're a great player. But if you want to be one of the most great or the greatest players, the top 5, top 10 greatest players, there are no excuses for these guys, man. No, Michael Jordan didn't care about the Jordan rules. There were no excuses for him. He said, what? We got to go back and work harder. We got to get it done as a team, man. We got to go back to practice and work harder. Shaquille O'Neal didn't do that. Did Shaquille O'Neal go back and work harder? No, he didn't do this. This is what we're alluding to. He didn't work harder, Shaquille O'Neal. He decided to go out and make his movies and lollygag on the court and use his physical size to dominate. So when we say Shaquille O'Neal's hard to referee, and people talk about, yo, Shaquille O'Neal would average 25 free throws a game. Yeah, Shaquille O'Neal would average over 6 fouls a game, man. He'd be fouling out of a lot of these games also. It goes both ways. It wasn't just Shaquille O'Neal being hacked all over the court. Shaquille O'Neal was also lowering his shoulder, throwing guys up off him. He was, like you mentioned, Rex, they were ragdolling guys out there. This is what Shaq was allowed to do on the court, man. So when people say, oh, people were smacking Shaq's arms, what are we talking about here? Shaq was able to throw elbows and clear guys out. He was allowed to hump guys in the air, essentially, when he went to dunk on them. And nothing was called. It went both ways.
I believe when he totally like obliterated Chris Dudley, didn't they call Dudley for the foul?
Obliterated Dudley.
Dudley got him back though, sort of.
It was Dudley's fault.
Oh my God.
Okay, somebody in here said Shaq bullied the bums. Exactly. He played bums. He didn't ascend until all of the great 90s centers got old or retired outright.
Oh,
You see in the thing,
AOH. All right.
AOH has been
All right.
talking for 5 minutes.
We're gonna give AOH one more chance.
I'm talking.
AOH, are you there?
Can you not hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh. Well, you waited long enough.
Oh, man.
Rex stole my thunder with the Dudley thing because that
I'm sorry.
bothers me. People love showing that as one of Shaq's "I'm dominating people" moves, and like Dudley almost was like being kind and like catching him after that dunk. And what Shaq do? Throws him to the ground, and the play continues. And the refs didn't come in to say anything about that. I thought that stands out in my mind as something pretty bad. But I wanted to jump on what Sports and Fitness said about excuses, because do you guys remember all the excuses they made for why he couldn't make free throws? Like he was too tall and his hands were too big. Do you guys remember that shit?
His
Right.
wrists or something, right?
Okay. So, have you guys ever shot on a Nerf hoop? It's easy to make them. How about Michael Jordan's hands? Like Jordan's hands might be as big as Shaq's. Those things are crazy.
They are. They are. If you look it up, they are. I was about to bring that up. His
Thank
hands are
Christ I got
roughly
something
the
in.
same size as Dr. J's.
Wow. Okay, I'm done.
I was gonna say Rajon Rondo
yeah,
has
thank
the
you for that.
craziest hands, I think, for someone his size.
Well, that's something that's never mentioned because, the old players, they were all plumbers. But for a plumber, Bob Cousy had just crazy huge hands.
Yeah, I remember going to the Nike store in Chicago or something. Like there's the big outlet, and obviously it's like all Nike and Jordan stuff in Chicago. And they have balls like metal basketballs with guys' handprints. And Rajon Rondo's, I think, was bigger than Dwight Howard's. Like it's like quite freakish how big his hands are.
I saw someone mention something about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't win until like his 7th season. I don't know why we're bringing up Michael Jordan in this, but then once again they're making excuses for Shaquille O'Neal. Let's be clear here: Shaquille O'Neal played with a lot of talent in his career, man. We could go down the laundry list of players that Shaquille O'Neal laced it up on the basketball court with. When you think about him coming into the league and him having Anthony Hardaway added to his team in his 2nd season. You're talking about the guys that he played with. When you talk about the 96 NBA Finals, the Orlando Magic won 60-plus games that season, guys. And what do people say? Oh, Horace Grant got hurt. Once again, you're making excuses for Horace Grant getting hurt in Game 2 or Game 3 of a series that they got swept in when they won 60 games. Where was Shaquille O'Neal? Where's Anthony Hardaway and Dennis Scott and Nick Anderson and all the players that had that team? Shaq has played with a lot of talent, man. When we talk about the Lakers in the late 90s, and people say, well, Del Harris was there, or this or that. What we're alluding to is Shaquille O'Neal playing with talent. You're playing with Eddie Jones. You're playing with Nick Van Exel. You're playing with, yes, maybe a young Kobe Bryant, but he's still on the team, damn it, still giving you help off the bench. They had a plethora of players on that team. You had talent around Shaquille O'Neal, which is why they were in the Western Conference Finals in 1998. But why did they get swept? They got swept because of the things that Shaquille O'Neal does not do well, get exploited. The leadership, the lack of intensity on the defensive end, the lack of hustle consistently. These are the things that lead to you not winning. It's about winning. And Shaq does not play winning basketball because Shaq has been inconsistent with the way that he approaches the game.
Someone said that Shaq broke his hand as a kid and he can't snap his wrist. Is that true? I've never.
Excuses. Who gives a damn?
Is that true though? I'm just wondering. I'd never heard that.
That's the rumor I heard. It was never
Okay.
confirmed though.
Okay.
At least I don't.
Making excuses.
Rex, how often are you referred to as the old man?
All the time.
Oh, all right.
I'm often referred to as my son's grandfather. They see my 9-year-olds and they think they're my grandkids.
Oh shit.
Well, I mean, to be fair,
Yes.
my grandson is 11 months younger than my son's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's easier to just type out REX than old man. Jesus.
Yeah, well, I was 47. They were born 2 days before my 47th birthday.
That ain't shit.
Go ahead,
47.
AOH.
No.
Tell us about the Taco Bell game.
He said no in the chat. We're losing steam. Are you taking callers?
Yeah, drop the link.
Yeah, let's drop the link.
Let all the Shaquille O'Neal fans come on in.
Thought I was going to be making more noise. I Shaq fans. I told Dart, oh, they're all going to be yelling at me. I thought all of y'all were
Well,
Shaq
I got
fans.
Shaq top 5% all time. I don't have him top 10 all time on my list. I don't know what some of these people are saying. Like I said, I still haven't seen anybody explain it in the comments about Shaq and him being a top center or top 2 or top 3 center. I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
I
I can name 10 centers that I would pick over Shaq.
I'd like to hear that, actually.
I got them on my phone.
Well, I wanted to add that I don't know if y'all saw it, but it was Rex and Robin on one of the first shows that we had done, and I think none of us had Shaq in the top 5. Any of us. It was Judge, OG, and you guys and me. I don't think any of us had him.
Yeah, personally, if you wanted my list, Russell, Wilt, Kareem, Hakeem, Moses, that's my top 5 if I have to choose. Now, obviously, situation, circumstance. You can interchange them, and they may be in different spots on that list. You go with Robinson, Ewing. I mean, I don't know how much any of y'all actually know about Nate Thurman, but do a 15-minute deep dive on Nate Thurman and look at what you find. Think you'll be surprised.
I don't think that classifies as a deep dive.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
I guarantee you, 90% of the people listening to this right now don't even know who he played for.
All right, we got a couple callers. Let's run through them real quick. King Speech, you're on. You got a question or comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of agree with most of you guys, but I kind of disagree with some of the points. I think you guys are a little hard on Shaq. I mean, the criticisms are fair, but at the end of the day, he was as dominant as he was for as long as he was. In my opinion, he was the best player in the league from the time Jordan retired in 98, 99, basically beginning of 99, to about 04. Then after that, I think Kobe took over. And so that's his period of dominance. Before that, he's called him a top 5 player from after his rookie second year until then. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I got him as the 4th best center, right ahead of Hakeem, only because of the period of dominance in the championships. I know Hakeem was a much more skilled player, but at the end of the day, Shaq did not have to apologize for his size and ability, just being able to get it done. So at the end of the day, that's his period of dominance. That's able to dominate with size and freakish athleticism. And honestly, that's the only reason why LeBron ahead of him all the time is because LeBron has the longevity. But it actually is one of the 8 players considered. I only consider 8 players in the NBA who dominated the league, and Shaq is one of them. Kobe is another. The Bird and Magic. The other 4 would be Kareem, Jordan, Wilt, and Bill Russell. So, I mean, you dominated the league for a period of time. It's a lot.
That's a good comment. Anyone want to respond?
Let me do it real fast. So I've been doing episodes recently about what that word means. Dominant means to be commanding, controlling, or prevailing over all others. Now, how would you say that?
Does he sound like he's from Cybertron for you guys too?
Yeah.
What's that?
Dart, can you drop out and come back real quick?
Dart's on Mars.
Hey, Speem, you said he coming from Cybertron?
Bro, I'm telling you, I can almost understand what he's saying just based on watching Transformer movies.
Dart, fall off and then come back.
He's speaking in binary code, bro. What I wanted to say
was when Shaq doesn't have to apologize for his size. What Shaq has to, maybe not apologize for, but feel bad about is his lack of overall, like I said, the hustle that he didn't give consistently, his lack of keeping himself in condition. This affected his longevity. This affected his effectiveness. When you talk about the dominance of Shaq, it was for literally 3 or 4 seasons there. But once again, we alluded to the other players that were falling out of the NBA at that time. So this kind of takes away from Shaquille O'Neal's dominance, so to speak, at that time. But that's what we're talking about.
Oh no. Dart, do you want to say something real quick?
Virus is spreading.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound good now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was going to say that word dominant. I think. What's that background noise? It's not.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still driving, so I don't know if it's a joke on me or something. But so dominant. I've been doing a show lately about the most dominant players of all time, and I think a lot of people don't know what that word means. It means to be commanding, controlling, or prevailing over all others. So I don't understand, outside of Shaq winning the scoring titles and the championships, and then the MVP, if you want to say iconism, and the first team All NBAs, how is he the most dominant player even during that time? I mean, you had Tim Duncan winning more MVPs, same with the All NBAs during that period that was brought up. He didn't win the scoring titles, but they were equatable guys during that time. For him to say like he was by and far the best player in the league, I think is disingenuous. I think it's just your preference because he was big and he was beating people up. I mean, he was a bully, like somebody mentioned earlier, which is fine. He got it done that way, but I wouldn't say that he was by and far the best player in the league.
But
I think
also, real quick, I'm seeing this like LeBron fan effect, in the sense that just because we're saying he wasn't X, Y, and Z doesn't mean we're saying he's whack or trash or
Thank
anything
you,
like that.
Fiend.
And I'm seeing a lot of that in the chat. Nobody's saying any of that. Like, we're recognizing his greatness, but again, it speaks to the greatness of the position itself. So I don't know. I think that's part of it too.
All right, King Speaks. Quick response, and then we have another caller waiting. Oh, here he dropped off. Here he dropped off. All right. Sports T, you're on. You got a question or comment?
Hey,
Sports
guys.
T.
Hey, Robin, how's it going?
What
Good
up?
morning. I think that Shaq is super dominant, guys. At least we need to take a look at that vacuum of 3 and 4 years that he was one of the most dominant players that we've ever seen. And I don't think that he came into the league and he was the best player. No, but he definitely skyrocketed into the league. I think for us to basically downplay what he was able to do, what he was able to show us, with our own 2 eyes. So Robin, I disagree with you just a smidge on this. Don't get mad at me, but I think that it's not just about MVPs. When we talk about dominance as it refers to basketball, it really is how you run over people and get to the rim. It's not just being able to control the game. That's not dominance. Dominance is Shaq. Dominance is Wilt Chamberlain. Dominance are the guys that, people were scared to guard Shaq. People were scared to guard dominant players, and that was Shaq. So no, yes, you guys are right. He was surrounded by top tier talent. He definitely came in and had the best of the players with him. I mean, we're not going to give him any credit for the finals run that he had in 1995. He gets no credit for that. I think that for us to say that he was just big is a little crazy, just because he did change 3 NBA rules. He was not only influential and changed the game, he accomplished quite a bit. So even if I don't really care about rankings where you guys have him ranked, I think we're all entitled to have, players wherever we want to rank them, but he was dominant.
Okay, so hold on. Dominique, let me ask you this though.
No, real fast, because it's not a question.
She said she disagreeing with me.
Okay, well, real fast. How dare you? That's it. That's all I have to say. Anyway.
Look, I'm not here to argue whether he's a top 5 center all time, but he was dominant. I mean, he skyrocketed to the league.
Well, hold on. So let me ask you a couple things real quick then. Because you said that we have to give him credit for 1995. We're giving him credit for 1995. We're actually debating if he's a top 5 center of all time. So that obviously is showing that we gave him credit because he's an all-time great player. He's arguably a top 5, center of all time. So we give him credit. But let me ask you, where would you have him as a top 5 center? Do you think he's top 3, top 2, top 1? Like, where would you have him on that 1 to 5 list?
I would probably have him at 5. And I agree with Angry Old Hoops. For me, Shaq, you can put him outside of the 5 and put Moses there, but I give him the 5th spot.
All right, so see, you do agree with me because that's why I had Shaq. I had him at number 5.
I'm
see,
sorry, I don't
sports
know
and
where
fitness
you had
rants.
him. I don't
That's
know where you
corrected.
had him. I'm
You
sorry.
love me. You love my child. You know the deal. Come on,
I
Sports T.
do love
You know I'm
you.
here for the education, and you know I got you. But listen, we agree on this. Maybe some of the things in my projection here is coming off a little bit wrong, and some of the things that I've said have come off a little bit wrong. But everything that we've said has been spot on, and I agree with everything that you just said. But when we talk about the dominance, what I've always alluded to is physical dominance of Shaquille O'Neal. It's not just necessarily dominance, because we also have to admit, and you have to admit this, Sports T, that when Shaq was dominant, that vacuum, that window you talked about, was when the other all-time great centers were starting to phase out of the league. We have to be honest about that,
So I
because
do
that's
want
the
to be
fact.
honest about that, but I don't think that's a fact. I think he was dominant as soon as he came into the league. He was shattering backboards back to back to
He
back.
What
won
does
no
that have to do
MVPs,
with
no
playing basketball?
championships.
It has a lot to do with playing basketball. Not everybody can go into the league and just shatter the backboard and get everybody out of their way and change 3 NBA rules.
That's
No
physicality.
Yeah,
players
I can go up and I can break a backboard. How does that make me a great basketball player?
Michael Jordan shattered the backboard.
What you guys aren't saying here, and what you're leaving out, is the fact that zone defense wasn't even allowed until Shaquille O'Neal came into the league. That was because of Shaq that zone defense was allowed. So all I'm disputing are 2 things. You guys mentioned that he only changed 1 rule. He changed 3 of them. You guys mentioned that perhaps he's not dominant. He was dominant. Those are the 2 things that I'm disputing. I'm not disputing your list. I think that people have the right to put him wherever they want, even if it's 75 on a top 75 list.
Sports T, real quick.
Physically dominant. Physically.
Real quick. And I know it's going to get weird. There's a girl in here, so you're probably going to see a lot of chests out in the chat. Can you equate, because he came in and he was physically, dominant, shattering backboards and everything like that?
But he wasn't just physically dominant. He was statistically dominant.
That's what I was going to ask. That's what I was going to ask.
He led the league in nothing.
He wasn't
equating the 2?
He dominated.
Your example. The only reason I'm asking is because your example was shattering the backboard, right?
So we're saying he didn't dominate statistically in the league.
No. I'm talking about said when he first came in. All I'm talking about is when he first came into the NBA. You referenced, him shattering the backboards, being physically abusive.
Even ran the ball down the court coast to coast. Like
I don't think
he was a great athlete.
Dominating.
George Marathon did that before too.
All right,
we're not deflecting to another player. We're talking about Shaq. So right now we're talking about Shaq.
Last
totally irrelevant.
And then we got another caller.
No, keep her in here, Nick. Keep her in.
Bro, she's going to keep the audience numbers up.
Okay, I really just wanted to stop by. Today's my day off. I'm going to rest a little bit. But thank you guys for having me. I really
thank you,
appreciate
Sports.
it.
I follow you now.
I just wanted to make those 2 points. I really thank you guys for having me. Happy Sunday. Enjoy. And I'll keep watching and commenting, okay?
Yo,
wait,
nice to meet you.
Wait, real quick. Hey, Sports T, I wanted to salute you and commend you for how you broke down that whole narrative with the LeBron Jordan and how he hadn't passed Kobe on Man Down Sports. Hey, salute to you. I just followed you. That was an excellent breakdown.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all you guys, and I'm following and watching everything that you guys do. You guys are all awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good morning, guys.
She said I was awesome. Thank you.
You are. You guys are awesome. Listen. And Michael Jordan is the best, and Michael Jordan fans are the best, by the way.
Dart, you hear that, Dart?
I did. I put on my Jesus baby shirt just for.
You gonna put that as your promo?
Hey, Dart, you better trademark that.
Yep, that's the sound bite.
I got Ticket TV to say it. I got Scap to say it. I got I got Sports T to say it. So there we go.
It's like that Maybach music thing.
Yeah,
we got it.
Got me. Have a good one, guys. Bye bye.
All right, Davis, you have a question or comment?
It's a comment. Are we recent, or are fans in the chat, are they victims of recency bias? I'm thinking
Probably not
about,
this channel.
well, not the panel, but the chat. Because I'm thinking about the last dominant centers. Like, Shaq was probably the last dominant center. When you really think about it, like, we got Embiid and Joker now, but before they came along, wasn't it Shaq who was like the last person we thought of as like just dominant, or at the center position, dominant at the center position? And I can agree with everything that has been said by the panel as far as looking at Shaq at his all-time status as a center. And he's borderline top 5. I got him 5 or 6 with Moses Malone, but Shaq didn't put in that work. Like, Shaq was gifted being 7'1" and freakishly athletic and having basketball skill and talent, but I don't think he maximized that talent. I think he went, like, which has been said, he made movies, made rap songs and all that, but we got to really evaluate Shaq and the Orlando Magic and that early Lakers team. Like, those Lakers teams were loaded. Like, several All-Stars on those Lakers teams that was getting swept by Utah, beat by San Antonio. I was watching this thing with Shaq and Penny, and Shaq was talking about he wasn't focused for the finals in '95 against Hakeem, and Penny was like, "No, I was getting sleep. I was focused." And when you look back at that series, Penny was balling. Shaq, he did what he did, but it tailed in that performance. Like, a lot went wrong in that perform for the Orlando Magic, but the King balled out and did what he's supposed to do, and Shaq, So that's my comment.
Yeah, anyone want to respond?
Yeah. I mean, listen, absolutely. I mean, listen, we're talking about here. No one's taking away from Shaquille O'Neal. Let's be very clear here. Shaq is an all-time great player. Like I said, a sports team. When we're talking about he's debatably a top 5 center all time, and people are arguing, is he a top 10 player all time, and things of that nature, that shows that people respect you and highly think about you and what you do on the basketball court. But we can't refute the facts, and the facts remain. When Shaquille O'Neal started to dominate the way that everyone talks about, the great centers that were in the NBA were phasing out, right? Like you mentioned, he was really the last great center. And why is that? Because all the other guys were already gone. They had been gone. So once again, that doesn't take away from Shaquille O'Neal, but we have to also talk about those things. When you mention Shaquille O'Neal and Anthony Hardaway and the dynamic between them, this is also what we're alluding to. The talent that Shaquille O'Neal had around him, but he didn't quite seem to get the most out of these guys. And why would he not do that? Because Shaq ain't in practice pushing everybody in practice, because he ain't practicing. So once again, this is what we talk about, and you talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant should have won 5, 6, 7 championships maybe. They should be regarded as the greatest duo in NBA's history. But in fact, it's Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And why is it really that they're regarded that way? Because if you think about Scottie Pippen, he's nowhere on the level of a Shaquille O'Neal singularly or a Kobe Bryant singularly. But it's the collaboration between them, because Michael Jordan was able to extract the most out of him. So you have two guys who maximize themselves. Shaq did not maximize himself, and that's the bottom line here.
Yeah. That gentleman's sweep against Detroit, he had a lot of gentleman sweeps. Y'all brought up against San Antonio or Utah a couple years ago. When he was in Miami, didn't the Bulls get him in a sweep in Miami, or a gentleman sweep? So Shaq is a great player, great center. No one's hating, but I think in the age of ESPN and the media, a lot of fanboys, they don't understand that truth, and looking at things in context and with analysis, that's actual like criticism and not hate. But
I'm gonna drop off real quick, guys. I gotta go. We gotta debate at 1, so I'm gonna drop off and get ready for that.
Yo, Nick, man, good luck, man. Be good.
Later, guys.
All right, sir.
Nick is competing in the losers bracket final, and then whoever
nice.
wins
against Alessandro in a Magic Johnson versus Kobe Bryant debate. After this stops, if you want to watch Nick debate Alessandro, who's greater, Kobe Bryant or Magic Johnson, tune into my channel after this at the top of the hour, wherever you are, because it's 7:30 in the morning here. But it's going to be an entertaining debate. He's one of the Nick is one of the 3 last people in the tournament, and whoever wins that matchup faces off against Jim from Self-Researched NBA Facts.
What's that topic, Dart?
It'll be it's a greater team to be determined, whoever wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to keep getting that message keeps getting lost. Nobody's saying again. It's just like the LeBron thing, right? If people are saying he's number 2 all time, why is that a slight? Like, do you understand the height of that being a compliment? So to have Shaq anywhere in your top 10 that's honorable. You know what I mean?
Y'all say the same thing to me about Jordan. I say that Michael Jordan, in my opinion, is the greatest shooting guard ever. But I don't believe that there is one singular player that can be named above all others. So I'm called a hater.
Well, it's because you're, old man. You're just old man to them.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that statement. Like, it's so many great players, or 10 great players, then 5 great players we can just discuss about their greatness. But I try to be objectable, or whatever the word is, and not be an idol worshiper or a celebrity worshiper. Like, I respect their greatness, but if someone said that Will is better than Mike, okay. Or if they want to say Magic is better than Mike, okay. Like, I'm not going to get bent out of shape. If you say LeBron is better than Mike, then there's going to be an argument. But at that top 4, top 5, like, I ain't tripping too much.
That you said it right there, man. Idol worship. That's what it is. Because 20 years ago, this wasn't. Oh Christ, I am old. 20 years ago, this wasn't even like, if you had who you had in your GOAT, it was that, and it wasn't an argument. It wasn't everybody attacking each other's personal weaknesses and worst nightmares and dreams and stuff like that. It was just, oh, that's cool, that's your opinion. But now it's just to your point about idol worship. How dare you say anything that that is not aligned with what I say? Now we gotta go at each other's throats.
I asked Sports T the same thing. How dare her?
Oh, you did? It's old bald man thing.
How dare you, Sports T? D. Davis for mayor. I wish you well on your election. It is election season, so I hope. I hope you're on.
Hey, just long as if you lower inflation and lower these gas prices, you got my vote.
Hey, I ain't running for nothing but the cable bill and the light bill. Like, that's the only people I'm running from. But but before I leave, did y'all hear about Matt Barnes? That thing that Jason Whitlock brought up about Matt Barnes lying about his high school race story. Woo.
I don't know.
I did not. I'm not shocked. Matt Barnes is.
No, was this on All the Smoke? Like, where can it be found?
So when they interview Kamala, he brought up a story about supposedly from high school about the KKK coming to his high school and hanging a noose with his jersey on it. And he said they burnt down the school or something like that. And Jason Whitlock did an expose about it on his.
Wait a minute. He fabricated a story?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Interesting.
Go to Jason Whitlock's his Instagram page and look at the story about it, and then look at the comments, because it's people from the high school talking about, man, he was a star athlete and he was an a-hole, so like he was like doing all like the keg parties and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. I love a keg party, but like it was no racism in his high school. Like he was with he was with everybody. So like the story that he got now is a total fabrication.
Oh wow.
You got to
Yeah.
be careful with that because Jason Whitlock, he's not well liked, and between myself and Matt Barnes, there might be one whole black person. So
Oh
it's
my
like
God.
it's like, what are you pulling the race
Hey,
car for? But come on,
Well,
man.
hey,
thank you, D Davis, for calling. Appreciate you calling in, man. We'll
okay.
get you on the next time.
Peace.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I guess I dropped the link again for another caller. We had Full Metal come in here a couple times. I don't know, and he kept coming back out. I don't know what the deal is with that. But I just want to ask if with Shaq, do you think that there's anybody else? I know that somebody had brought up, or I think it was me, LeBron James. Is there anybody else that is nearly as overhyped as Shaq, or has this been covered?
No, that wasn't covered.
Michael Jordan.
How dare you, Rex?
Well, see, you know what it is?
What's up?
No, when we mention something, or like, or for example, Rex just brought up Michael Jordan. So let's go with this. When we think about someone like Michael Jordan, and we think about Shaquille O'Neal, the difference between Michael Jordan to this day and all these other all-time great players is that Michael Jordan still to this day has remained out of social media, has remained out of these podcasts. He doesn't do interviews like that. He remains out of the public eye, so to speak. He's living his best life, essentially, Michael Jordan. And that's what really makes Michael Jordan so great, is that he doesn't promote himself through podcasts or social media. He doesn't have a billion of commercials all over the place telling you to buy his shoes and, buy his products. But yet, somehow, some way, Michael Jordan still manages to be just as famous as he ever's been, sells just as much as he ever has. But when we think about someone like Shaquille O'Neal, the one thing that bothers me about Shaquille O'Neal is that any chance that he gets to promote himself, to pump himself up, to call himself the most dominant, he does it. And I think that's why a lot of people think that he's overhyped or, overrated or over celebrated, because anytime that Shaq gets a chance to talk himself up, he does it. There's really a lack of humility from a lot of these great players when you see and notice the way they speak about themselves in their past career. They try to rewrite history. So a lot of the Shaq fans will always say the same things. Shaq is the most dominant. He'll bully this guy. He'll knock this guy down. They can't give you any basketball breakdown as to why Shaquille O'Neal was greater than XYZ. They just talk about his physical size. And that's why I say it's physical dominance, not dominance. Sports T came on here and she mentioned dominance. I said he did not dominate statistically. He didn't. He didn't rebound or block shots or none of those things. He didn't win any MVPs in the 90s. None of that stuff. No defensive teams.
All right. Welcome, CJ, or not. I don't know. Anyway. You just dropped off the thing. But what do y'all
telling too much.
Does anyone have anything to say about with Robin? I think it's a good point. But I think that the people that just self-aggrandize to say, I did that because I'm the GOAT or whatever, or that one made me the GOAT, that kind of stuff. But CJ, welcome, CJ. Do you have anything you wanted to ask anyone on the panel?
What's up, y'all? Can y'all hear me?
What's up, man? Yeah.
Hey, I love the show. I'm glad to be off today so I can call in. But I just wanted to talk about Shaq real quick and put the 2006 excuse me, the championship in 2006 in perspective. The Dallas Mavericks were killing the Heat offensively. Shaq was doing nothing defensively. The reason, in my opinion, that the Heat were able to overcome the Dallas Mavericks was because of Alonzo Mourning's defense. His physicality and the way he impacted, he changed every shot that Dirk and Josh Howard and all those guys were putting up. I feel like him and Dwayne Wade's impact, his free throws, all that stuff, that's what really got them over the hump. Shaq was good. He put up his numbers. He had his impact. But the X factor to me was Alonzo Mourning more than Shaq alongside Dwayne Wade. And also, his lack of leadership showed the next season as the reigning champions when they got swept by my baby Bulls with Ben Gordon and all of them and Captain Kirk. I just wanted to just put his career into perspective when they talk about dominance and, put some context to it.
Yo, that was a great comment, man. You broke it down right there. And what you did was you exposed something that we brought up earlier when we talked about the talent that Shaquille O'Neal had around him throughout his entire career. When you bring up an Alonzo Mourning, right? That you talked about could have been the X factor, his defensive intensity, his presence on the defensive side of the ball. We didn't even mention that Gary Payton that was also on that team, right? Guys like Jason Williams. There were a lot of talent that's been around Shaquille O'Neal. So great comment.
All right, CJ, thank you for calling in. We got a couple more people in the backstage. We're going to shut this down. I got to do the show with Nick. But thank you for calling, sir.
Nice. Thanks for the Kirk Heinrich drop, too. I haven't heard that name in forever.
We got YT Hoops with the glasses.
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
YT Hoops. Here we go. It's the GOAT.
What up? What up?
This is YT Hoops. I'm YT Hoops.
Oh, yeah, you got to gain about 40 pounds and you're there.
Oh, I don't know. I'm pretty chunky myself, so I've been following the dominance of Shaquille O'Neal going to the McDonald's drive-thru lately.
Right. All right. So I got two quick things. Right. So when I said the other day that like Shaq's the GOAT, obviously it was a little bit tongue in cheek. But here's my point. Right. My life's on the line. I have to win one game. I get the first pick and I can pick any player and I get them at their absolute peak. I'm probably taking Shaq. It's close with MJ, but I just value a center so much. And I think at his absolute best, he's probably the most impactful and a positive player ever. I don't think that's a crazy statement. Just real quick. Second thing is, yeah, Shaq is definitely top 5. Shaq is definitely over Russell. And the reason is because of his relative true shooting. So that's a good way to compare players across eras. So Russell was negative 0.05, right? So relative true shooting is what did you shoot versus the average of the league? Shaq is like +7 for his career. And again, remember, that's based off of that also includes guards who are always going to bring that average down. And we all know that offensive input is more important than defensive input. That's why we rate guys like Magic Johnson so highly, despite him being just a mediocre defensive player, and amongst many others. So that's my take. Yes, I think Shaq's definitely top 5, and I'll hand it to you.
Rex, do you have anything to say about the true shooting? Whatever.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite. Evidently, other people do too.
I want to mention something he talked about. YT Hoops talking about if I would draft a player, I would draft Shaquille O'Neal first. Okay, well, it just so happened that the Orlando Magic did draft Shaquille O'Neal first. Now, obviously, this wasn't prime Shaq, but this is where you guys lose yourselves. Shaquille O'Neal was drafted to the Orlando Magic. They did not even make the playoffs in his first season. They didn't make the playoffs until they got Anthony Hardaway the next year. So
no, they made the playoffs the first year.
No, it's my turn to speak. It's my turn to speak here. I'm going to break this down to you. So once again, so you're talking about his immediate impact was not in winning. It wasn't winning. It's about winning, guys. So now let's think about when was Shaquille O'Neal's peak? In 2000? In 98? In 99? When was it? If Shaquille O'Neal's peak is 2000, once again, this exposes Shaquille O'Neal. Why was his peak when all the other great centers were gone? If his peak was in 95 or 96, then once again, did he win a championship at his best with Orlando Magic, with the talent he had around him? Very talented team. No, he didn't. So once again, when you talk about drafting a player, you talk about the impact on winning. If you need a win in one game, Shaq doesn't really prove to be a winner or impact winning. He impacts statistics, but not the winning. It's the sum of the parts around Shaquille O'Neal that's always made him win. This is what we talk about all the sweeps he's been involved in.
That's crazy. That Magic team went to the finals. They were garbage. We can Google it. They went to the playoffs that first year, and a very young Shaq went to the finals. Man, no impact on winning. He won 4 chips. He's got 3 Finals MVPs. Like, how can you say that?
We just talked about the teammates that he had, though.
It's always about the teammates, though.
The LeBron James tactic. You said that Shaq took the '95 Magic because they were bums. Anthony Hardaway is arguably one of the greatest players of that era without the injuries. What do you mean? Nick Anderson was a very good player. Dennis Scott was a very good player. Dennis Scott was one of the first volume 3-point shooters in NBA's history. He was shooting 8-9 3-points a game in an era where guys were known for taking 2 or 3 at a high clip. These are the things you had going on. You're downplaying Shaquille O'Neal's teammates and lift Shaq. Look what you're doing. You exposed Shaquille O'Neal.
I'm doing the opposite. He had a good team. Every team that wins has good players. No team has ever won with just one player. Like, you can't. We all know this. And that's why I don't like to rate players based on team success. I think it's kind of bullshit. And you're kind of with me because I heard you defending David Robinson. You understood, like, hey, you need a good team to win. And you were right, by the way, in that argument.
I won a game once with just myself, 1-on-5. And I'm not making it up, I promise.
Yeah, your son and his friends.
No, I did it in my dreams. Anyway, YT Hoops.
I saw someone in the
okay.
chat. I saw someone in the chat say, so I just want to address it real quick because, they were directing it to me. So they said Shaq had talent around him, but he's the reason they got swept. That's not what I said. Once again, you guys can't listen. You don't understand. What I'm saying is when we talk about Shaq and the talent he had around him, we're talking about the impact on if you're the best player on the team, of course it falls on you. What the hell are you guys talking about, man? See, you guys have a mentality of the best player don't take none of the blame. The best player is supposed to take all the blame. So my man, Daniel Jet, man, get that out of your ass.
All right, gentlemen. I got to get so as mentioned before. YT Hoops disappeared. Anyway, as mentioned before, if you're watching, you want to see an exciting debate between or with the topic of Magic Johnson versus Kobe Bryant, you can watch Nick debate that, taking the side of Kobe Bryant versus Alessandro in the MJFB Summer Debate. Losers bracket finale with the grand prize being a championship belt. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a great 5 3-minute rounds. You get to hear every bit of detail of why one of the guys are going to be greater than the other. Check it out. And just a reminder for everyone's channels here, please like and subscribe to their pages. There's Sports and Fitness Rants. There's Steam Engine. There's Politicus Rex. There's Hoop God. And then there's myself. Michael Jordan fans are the best. Gentlemen, you have anything to say to the people before we get out of here?
Shaquille O'Neal fans are the worst.
They are not the best. I can say that. Robin, you got anything to say?
Yeah, the usual, man. Like I said, man, part of the thing that we do here on the Sunday show, I've always been saying this, is we try to give you guys some perspective. Now, as you can see, we are different ages. We've watched different teams, different things growing up. I've always tried to give people the perspective of what I watched in the 80s and the 90s. I have a very good memory with this stuff. A lot of you guys know that, man. And that's all I've ever been doing is giving the perspective, man, based off of what I watched. And the perspective is, like I said, always honest. I don't have to lie or make up stories or create narratives to embellish the guys that I witnessed, because I always talk about the effort and the hustle that these guys gave consistently. That's what I remember as a kid. It's not about the numbers. I've always told people, I didn't know that someone shot a certain percentage, or somebody, he was a three-point shooter because he shot 40% from three, or he was a great defender because he had 5 all defensive teams and he had a lead in league in steals or blocks. I knew what these guys were doing on the court because I watched them do it. That's how you know what these guys were known to do. They were either specialists or they were role players, whatever the case may be. What we did here today, when we talk about Shaquille O'Neal, and we say that Shaquille O'Neal is arguably a top 5 center of all time, and he's in the conversation with some of these other guys, and people try to say that we're bugging, we're haters, we don't know what we're talking about. No, we're educating you and we're putting perspective. When people just want to say, oh, Shaq's the most dominant. That's all you guys were saying. No one in the chat said anything about Shaq's game as to why he was greater than this guy or that guy. All I kept seeing was the same thing. Shaq's dominant. Shaq could slam this guy. He could do this to this guy. You didn't break nothing down. So what that leads me to believe is that you guys understand what we're saying and you can't dispute what we're saying. So those are the facts. No one's taking away from Shaq. He's an all-time great player, probably a top 15, 20 player in my opinion. But to me, he's arguably a top 5, and he's nowhere near a top 5 or top 10 all-time great player, man. Those are the facts. So once again, my man Hoop God, thank you for coming through again. I know I rambled on, guys. Speam, once again. Rex, thank you for coming through and giving us your perspective. And as always, Dart, you know the deal, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. You guys know the deal.
I finally came to the show. But yeah, I apologize for that. I got for the next couple of weeks, I got some real life things. Just to tell you what I do for a living, I'm a YouTuber. So anyway, Steam Engine, what do you no, anyway, I guess that one yeah, that
no, I'm just gonna take over. We should rename this show Michael Jordan Fans Understand Context. Like seriously, Robin just got done talking about it. It's all about, and again, it helps being an old head because we've been alive long enough to understand because we've seen it versus people talking about it. So context is everything, and that is what we're trying to do. And very often the response is, well, Shaq did this and Shaq did that. It's no different than saying LeBron was a great father. LeBron's a philanthropist. Okay, but that's not what we're arguing. We're arguing what's in the damn title. So yeah, can we? Maybe actually let's rename our show the Precision Hoops to Context Hoops, and just leave it at that because that's our big thing, man. Putting stuff in perspective. Thank you, everybody.
It doesn't have an exciting arrow in it though in the intro.
Well, all you got to do is get the what was the woman's name? Because I know a lot of people in here don't talk to the quote unquote girls very often. What was her name?
Sports Tea.
Sports Tea. Just get Sports Tea on one of these shows at least once a week, and you'll see your audience numbers stay consistent or go up.
You trying to say that we ain't good to look at?
I mean, I didn't say that. I'm just saying I'd like to improve.
No, you're right, man. You're right.
Improve the output. See, exactly. You're like one of these LeBron fans.
It's always good to have a different voice.
You should try and get Irish Girl.
Irish Girl. Who's Irish Girl?
Look her up on YouTube. Irish Girl.
I never heard of her.
I'll shoot my.
Very big Larry Bird fan. She has thousands of followers.
Mike and
Oh, I remember Irish Girl. Actually, I do remember off of my arch nemesis's channel. Michael Jordan Fans Are the Worst channel.
Well, I wasn't going. You didn't. I don't know if you wanted me to say it, so I didn't say it. But
I didn't know that was a thing. I'm checking that out.
I think it finally got banned for good. Anyway, I digress. Hoop God, what do you got to say to the people? In typical.
Well, there you have it.
Hoop God, what you got, man?
Typical Hoop God fashion, technical difficulties. But yeah, no, again, thank you all for coming. I know I caught the back end of it, but it's something that we had talked about last week. I thought it was fun to talk about this. It's always one of those exciting topics to talk about. Again, come check out the debate. It's going to come. It's going to start in 5 minutes. It's a pretty big deal. It's almost whoever wins this is going to be decided to be in the finals of the MJFB Summer Debate League, which it's not summer anymore. But yeah, we'll be able to see who wins the championship at the end of that. So, but yeah, thank you all for coming again. Robin, Speed Engine, Politicus Rex, and Hoop God, if he's there, technical difficulties included. And thank you, Chad, as well. Thank you for coming and joining us.
It's still summer where you're at.
Oh, it's summer all the time here. So I guess, yeah. And for everyone, Michael Jordan fans are the best.